him making everybody get the runs. When I got to that part, I'm like, are you serious? This is it?
Diarrhea.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fitness, Fables, and Fatherhood. This is Josiah here with Erik the Blue on a good old Easter Sunday. As Erik, you're wearing a suit, so you must have some plans for today.
Yep. We went into church this morning, and then we went out to my folks' place out at the farm and did our annual Easter egg excursion. So kids are well sugared, and everybody's happy. So yeah, it was a good, fun morning. How about you?
Nice. Nothing. We don't have anything going on today. Did have some plans yesterday, but as you and I talked on the phone, 2026, not my year. So I know you're in a bit of a hurry today, so we'll just get right into things. This month or 2 months, we both read the Ship of Theseus, also titled S, which is a book off of our list that you provided. If you wanted to give a quick sort of synopsis of the book and kind of the conceptual nature of it, I can fill in any gaps.
You might have to do some heavy lifting. How do you talk about this book? This book is unlike any other book that I have read. This was a very challenging book. I would actually look at this book more like a piece of art. This one was authored by J.J. Abrams, who we know have directed a number of films like Star Trek, and I believe the other gentleman was Dorst. I'm unfamiliar with the other author, but they came together to write this book, and it comes sleeved in a package, and on the package cover is an S. So the book they wrote, yeah, there you go. So that is the book that they wrote is S. And as you uncover it and you pull this out, it seems like you are reading a library book that has been pulled out, and the title of the book inside is The Ship of Theseus by V.M.Straka. So already it's a beautiful like clue within a clue, and as you're trying to figure out who this author is, V.M.Straka, you go on this journey and you are trying to figure out who this character is, who we actually don't have a name for other than S. And so it's one of these perplexing kind of books that there's the text of a story that Straka has written, and within the margins you have two sets of notes from two different characters, Erik and Jen. Jen's like an undergrad lit major, and then you have Erik, who is a grad student. So you go through this journey with Erik and Jen, both have their own individual styles, and you kind of watch the color of their texts over time mature in the margins. So your sense of time is also can be different based on how you read it. So I think, Joe, you might have had one particular approach on maybe how to read this text. I actually I tried to go through and just do the text and then the other one, and pretty soon over time I thought, no, I'm just going to start reading it all together. So that might have influenced my reading of this as well. But you go through the journey, and so you're reading multiple layers of text, because there's the text of the Ship of Theseus that they're reading, which is one of them. You have a narrative where you have these annotations of the text by someone named Caldera. So they're providing their own interpretations on Straka, and then you have kind of this mystery as Jen and Erik are trying to figure out within this fictional world, right, who Straka was, and they kind of come together. So I don't know, how would you describe this book? Like it's more of a mystery to me. This is like a puzzle more so than just like any typical book that you would pick up and read.
Definitely. It's more of an art piece, as you said, or a sort of coffee table object than it is a true book. You have these parallel narratives, the narrative that is written in the book Ship of Theseus, as well as this parallel narrative in the marginalia between Jen and Erik. And then you also have almost this third parallel narrative told via the inserts that kind of come with it. So, like you said, the book does come sleeved with a shrink wrap packaging because there are a bunch of things inside, postcards, etc., that tell more to the story. Um, the the book definitely is interesting in its entirety, but uh, as we'll discuss later, has a couple faults as well. The concept, as I was doing some research, kind of waiting for you to finish up the last little bit of the book, was J.J. Abrams, his sort of pet project, was at an airport and found a book.
I found a book.
Resting on a table. He opened it, and inside it read, "If you find this book, read it and leave it somewhere for someone else to enjoy." And when he found this book, he did just that. And the concept to this book was sort of born. He took it to a publisher. The publisher reached out to Dorst. Dorst just so happened to be reading a book on Shakespeare at the time. And I'm not sure how much you're aware of some of the controversy around Shakespeare and whether Shakespeare actually was the person who wrote the plays and the poems that are attributed to him, because many people don't think that his educational background leaned or gave him the ability to write what he did. So there's some controversy as to whether Shakespeare was the man that we think he was. And had also been digging into the mystery of this gentleman by the name of B. Travin, who wrote a few different books, which I think were heavily influenced into S, given one of the books was called The Death Ship. And there are significant nautical themes in this book, if you can't tell from the Ship of Theseus in the title. But this B. Travin was a German who moved to Mexico, changed his name to I believe Rhett Marut, wrote another book which became a movie, and I'm blanking on the movie's name right now, but went to the production of the movie, or said that he was going to send an advisor to the set of the movie, this man named Hal Croves. Well, that was just him, under another pseudonym. So as Dorst is sort of going into the Shakespeare controversy and this B. Travin sort of history, he's approached by Abrams, has this idea for the book, and then S is sort of born out of that. But it's sort of a love story between Jen and Erik, as well as the two main characters in the novelization itself of Ship of Theseus, this S character, as well as his love interest Sola. So definitely interesting. Gave me some the Blair Witch Project from back in the day. I know you're not a horror movie fan, but the marketing campaign behind that sort of was supposed to lead you to believe that this all truly happened. And similarly, this book is trying to tell a story through an experience more than the actual written text. So it was definitely interesting. When you got the book initially, because you've had this for some time, did you find that when you opened it, that it was intimidating? What did you think of it? You open up that first page and all these little pieces of paper
trinkets
fall out of it.
Start falling out. Yeah, no, I absolutely love just the uniqueness of it. I loved having all the different colors, and like already it just piqued my interest. It was very just intriguing because it was such a different kind of concept. And I remember like getting it and paging through and kind of reading through some of the notes like in advance of like trying to dive into the text. But I do think that uh, as much as I was interested in trying to explore it, as soon as I started to try to read it the first time, it was too intimidating because there was so much going on, the back and forth of all of the, you have the text and you're trying to understand like these different notes from different timelines, that it was a little too confusing to me. So I do think I got about, it's either like a third or halfway through the book. And I think I had tried to read it all in together as I was reading it the first time, but it was too much for me to hold on to. So again, if I think you and I had kind of talked, and there was the approach that perhaps you should just read the text itself and then go back through and read all the margins. So I did try to do that. And again, because I had already kind of read the first part, I really tried to focus on the text first. I got about halfway through, and then I tried to kind of read it all together because I kind of felt like I knew where it was going. Now, admittedly, this one, because there's so much going on, it was much more dense, and it's not something that it's just a page turner and you're able to sit and carve through it at night. At least I can't. There's kind of too much going on. So this one definitely took me more time, and towards the end, I feel like I was kind of skimming through. So yeah, definitely harder to approach, although it was. I mean, it was accessible, but it was just complex. So
Yeah, complex in form, not necessarily in writing. Although he did use quite a bit of language that sort of harkened back to almost a Lovecraftian style. Like I found myself writing down various words as I went through, like, ooh, this is nice.
mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah,
one of the characters in the margins was commenting on, ooh, new favorite word.
yeah,
And I did find myself doing that as well. But I do agree, complex in form, not necessarily in substance. The book you and I did discuss prior, and you had sort of recommended going through and reading the text and then the marginalia after. And the margins are colored in a way that sort of indicates the passage of time. So you can read through multiple times and sort of get a lay of the timeline. And I did read it that way. So I read through the story first, then the blue and blue margin text. The one character writes in cursive, the other character in print. Very unsettling as every letter was capitalized, which was interesting. I don't understand. I can't write that way. Um,
I liked that. I just, just commenting on that, I loved that Erik was like the logical, structured one, and so his handwriting was block like in the capitalization. It was, you know, whereas Jen is the female character, and hers were flowing, and she's more emotive in the beginning, less structured in the beginning, and then you see not only the colors shifting over time, but you also see like how they're engaging shift over time as well. So to me, that was a really effective use of all of the materials that they had. Right.
yeah, and they did do an interview where they commented on the selection of the handwriting and how they had a casting process for this whole thing.
Okay. Nice.
As J.J. Abrams is more from the visual media world, he and Dorst had a selection of handwritings to choose from, and they wanted the handwriting to give a personality to the character, which was quite interesting. Um, Actually, J.J. Abrams, he said he would recommend reading through chapter by chapter. So read the chapter through the story, and then go back to the beginning of the chapter and read the start of the marginalia, and then finish that entire thing before moving on to the next. Which I thought was an interesting take because I hadn't seen that recommended anywhere else online other than by him. But Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and just like it's interesting as you are trying to uncover, you're making these assumptions as you're going along, but you can kind of tell like there's red pen that is faded, and so it kind of almost turns to an orange, right? And there's pencil, and you can just tell by the way in which they're writing, like where in time that they're making those observations. So yeah, going from like the black and blue colors to like the more emotive, like more heated colors, right? Towards the end, I think there's like more purple or greens, and there's kind of the blending of some of those. So
Yeah, the
really love
first
that.
margins is actually the pencil, which you can
Mm-hmm.
read just with the text, and it's fine.
Yep.
Doesn't give spoilers. That's supposed to be Eric's sort of first time through the book,
Yep.
just making comments for himself, and then Jen is responding sort of to those comments, and there's the conversation. She's blue and he's black. Text, and then it goes green and orange, and then red and purple, and then black and black at the very end, the final read through. So, yeah, an interesting way to tell a story, definitely. Sort of this ergodic book, this ergodic literature book, kind of stealing things from this like epistolary novel style as well, where you're telling stories through letters, but everything's contained just in the margins of this text. So interesting book, rather expensive. Unfortunately, you won't be able to pick this one at a library, just given its nature. But it was definitely an interesting experience, which we can comment on more. But when you went through the first narrative go through with S, you have this character. Um, what were your thoughts on the main narrative of the actual book written by Straka himself?
It's interesting because I think one of the things that popped out to me just initially as you get introduced to this character is that it's he's lacking memory, and so it's kind of this question of like what happened, and you're trying to place him where he's at, and he gets drug out onto this boat like it seems that he was something put in his drink or whatnot, and he was shanghaied and brought onto this crew, and then you're trying to figure out who he is in relation to these crazy ship crew members, and there's a monkey, and it's
Yeah,
just kind
and
of
I should say at this point we're
fanciful.
we're going to be
Yeah,
given spoilers after
totally.
this. Um, Everything up until now, very very light spoilers, but now we'll be talking about the actual book itself. So
Spoilers.
get away from, you can't really spoil this book, but any details might want to walk away.
So just the that sense of identity is he's trying to uncover who he is and why these people would bring him onto this ship and the role that they're engaging with. And I remember uh like there are these points throughout the book where they're kind of asking who he is, and either it's kind of interrupted or kind of it's just brought along and you kind of go along with it, but it's the sense that like there is an absence of identity there within S, right? And it's not just with him, but it's repeated in even like names of cities. They'll also be blocked out where it's just the first letter and then a dash. So all these placeholders for for these characters and places. And so to me, yeah, just that sense of who he was and the commentary and identity, even in the margins as well, was just really, I guess, engaging. So,
Yeah, S, as you said at the start, he doesn't know who he is, and you're brought in, and with the character not having a name, you also don't have much to latch on to. He's just the man in sort of the raincoat or the um, what was he wearing at the beginning, like of the trench coat or
yeah, but he changes these clothes over time as he almost has like different roles as he, you know, almost becomes different people, and so like with the Shakespearean part, I kind of liked that idea of you're kind of changing with the different clothes that you wear, right? Um, uh, and I think part of it that was actually hard for me to read that is like, if you're not paying attention, like he does go on this journey and it does bring you in and out, and yes, there's continuity to it, but it feels so different as he's going along on his journey that like sometimes I
Yeah.
kind of lose myself in that, and so it was a little bit disorienting, and I don't know if that was more because of the way in which that was written or because I was trying to focus on the other
Mhm.
commentaries as well.
Well, and you and I have discussed like our stylistic preferences as far as novels go. I prefer more of a character focused novel. You prefer more of a plot focused novel. The main book itself is kind of neither.
Mm-hmm.
You have this character
Yeah.
with amnesia who doesn't really know anything about himself. So you as the reader reading it also don't get much details. It's you get a lot of introspection from him, but not much else. And the plot, the through line doesn't really exist either as you're introduced to the bad guy, who I finished this a while ago, so I'm blanking on his name. Vovoda, I believe, was his name. And you don't really know much about him and why he's bad. You just show up on a shore, taken there from a boat, which kind of harkens back to that B. Travin's death ship, because there's some very horror esque aspects to that ship, including the sewing of the mouths shut, and the the main character of or the captain of the ship, Maelstrom. Even that harkens back to some Shakespearean writing. So you have this repetitiveness where he's on the ship, taken to the shore. He meets some people. There's a bad guy. They are chased by the bad guy. Everybody dies. He gets away. Rinse, repeat over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Until the final chapter, chapter 10, and you're actually told in the sort of prelude to the book that chapter 10 isn't an original. It was replaced by this FX Caldera, who was his translator and editor for many, many years. So the 10th chapter has a different ending than was originally intended. So that's interesting. Um, did you have any issues with the prose? It was very fast paced. It was very almost truncated in how the book was written. So the first time through, just reading the text, I did find that I could read massive chunks of this, um, 30, 40 pages at a time, 50 pages at a time, without really getting too bogged down in the weeds. But what were your thoughts on the actual writing itself?
I mean, and again, I don't know if this is just because maybe I was blending the different parallel narratives that were going on, but like, I guess the text itself was fine, but because I didn't have that plot, I would kind of lose my interest. Uh, so there would be themes, there would be things that would pull me back in. So I think there's this phrase, about what begins at the water, what ends at the water, like something about coming in and out of the water. And like as you pick up on these little clues throughout, those are the pieces that would re-engage me, to pull me in, to try to figure out, okay, like what's going on. And as they start to see like this symbol S within the book, that was also an interesting piece to kind of pull me in. But like, I guess for the content, as he's trying to kind of chase this Sola love interest character, right? Like, there are these elements that will kind of bring me through, but I think again, like you mentioned, if for whatever reason that plot as it is kind of ambiguous as you're trying to figure out kind of who he is and where he's going, uh, I think that there were chunks where like I would kind of glaze over them, and because of that, like I probably had some issues. So not necessarily like the prose itself, but more so like the plot inconsistency for me that like detracted from my ability to like read through it
Right. Right.
enjoyably.
And did you feel like it delivered on a climax? I mean, you had Vovoda. Vovoda was from the beginning the big bad, who he's sort of this arms dealer. And there's a lot of parallels and sort of allegory towards like writing, and writing being a powerful weapon, like the wine and this substance that they're mining is this blue black color, similar to ink in its consistency, but it's caustic to the skin. And this Vovoda is taking time to sell this material to prop up these fascist dictatorships and these other people around the world that aren't necessarily the greatest individuals but have money to pay for his services. And then you get to chapter 10, which, mind you, Straka, the original author, again, wasn't the supposed author of. It was Caldera finishing the book. Do you feel like there was a payoff in the actual narrative to compel you to read through just the text without the extra?
I mean I do, because I feel like there's a, you know, there's the sort of mirroring that's going on right between the narratives. So
But
the
it ends
deeper
in
you,
diarrhea.
that's kind of part of the point too, right?
Like it just ends in him making everybody get the runs. When I got to that part, I'm like, "Are you serious? This is it?"
Yeah.
He goes there. He go so um, that's going to sound way out of place, but he shows up on the island to sort of have this final confrontation with Vovoda, and you they have this plan, and they get disguises, and they're going to go into the cave and kill him, and then he instead just kind of half poisons them, so they all get sick and have to run into the woods and poop.
Right. And there's kind of no clear win to it. There's kind of no finality in that, right? Normally, the climax gives you the resolution, it gives you clarity, it gives you the answer to what it is you're trying to answer, which is beautiful because this is the whole text, right? Is kind of, to me, this was about identity and, you know, what is identity. And I think you and I started before we came into this, we had kind of gone back and forth in terms of like some of the philosophy that goes into even the name of the Ship of Theseus, right? And so we're talking about uh, you know, kind of those different models, and all of those philosophers are going to give you those different answers. That's what's kind of beautiful about this book, is that it doesn't give you the answer, but it comes at it in a different way. It makes you engage to really like discover that for yourself. So
Overall, maybe. And the
yeah,
mystery of like who Straka is, like the author,
yeah,
which we're going to get to. But the
yep,
actual novelization, like the end, like he doesn't he doesn't conclude anything. It just kind of ends. And I think the nephew dies, right? Or the son of Vivoda, because he's up there drunk and like talking about how everyone there's an idiot, and eventually someone, I think, kills him. I think you hear a gunshot as S is going down into the cellars to confront Vivoda himself. But I I'm not sure if you found this, but there's a second ending online that was posted on a Tumblr by Dorst himself, where and it was named Straka's true ending to Ship of Theseus. So the one that Caldera replaced. And I think it was better. And like I get it. It's some of the storytelling there is sort of this love interest between Caldera and the author Straka. And there are these ciphers in each chapter that you're supposed to be able to figure out. And in the 10th chapter, if that was written by Caldera, the cipher, which you need the insert,
Yeah.
the wheel,
There's like a little wheel. Yep.
you only need that for the 10th chapter. And the locations, you put in the longitude and latitude of all of the locations that are listed throughout that chapter, and you get a message: I have loved you from the beginning, and I will love you to the end. And if Straka didn't write that chapter, then that was written by Caldera as a message to Straka himself. Um, but in the original ending, Vovoda gets his head bashed in by a monkey, and S is actually a ghost. He's this um, multi shadow sort of being that exists sort of outside of reality, which that makes more sense given all of the lead up to that. And the final chapter is actually written from the perspective, at least the last few chapter or the last few paragraphs, from the perspective of the monkey. And the monkey's sort of looking at S as S is sort of fading in and out. In the true ending, the Straka original, Sola also dies. So Sola dies, Voda's killed by the monkey, and S is sort of left, sort of unfulfilled and doesn't know what to do, filled with rage, filled with like a loss of purpose, given that his love Sola is gone, as well as his enemy Vovoda, and you're just left with the monkey sort of looking at him, watching him. That seemed like a much more conclusive ending and satisfying one. But that being said, I believe that the main sort of purpose of this whole project isn't the main novelization anyway. It's in all of the excess. The there's a Tumblr online that is Jen's like diary you can find and go through.
And that's something like, as much as I tried to engage with all of the inserts and trying to kind of decipher some of that. I didn't take the extra step, so I'm probably the bad. I probably missed out on some of that.
And I'll send you that other ending to see if you're a
Yeah,
fan of that one more.
but I mean,
But
even so, like that it's kind of interesting then, because in either case, you've got kind of a cycle, right? That sort of resets as you're trying to figure out which ending not only is more true, right, but you're trying to get to an answer that's ambiguous. So even that to me seems like it's reflective of kind of that same through line, that he's not giving you a clear win, a clear final truth that's being revealed.
yeah, and I do think that is it's an interesting sort of character study or insight to the author Straka, which is the fundamental mystery. If we go into the marginalia and what Jen and Erik are trying to figure out, the whole purpose of them reading this novel and starting their interaction is to figure out who was Straka, because in the margins, Jen and Erik are both students at the same school. Erik was a grad student, as you had said, and Erik had been kicked out of school because his sort of academic advisor, this gentleman by the name of Moody, as a parallel to Vovoda, was trying to steal sort of Erik's work to publish a book to show or declare that they knew who V.M.Straka was, because that's the whole mystery that sort of underlies the entire thing, is that the author of Ship of Theseus is sort of this unknown, and there's all these theories out there. And Jen, as she's struggling with her time is as an undergrad going to school to fulfill her father's wishes, not her own, she finds some escapism in the book and goes through and starts reading all of Straka's old books. There are 19 of them, and there are 19 sailors on the ship, and there's all these references to 19 throughout the book. But as she's getting lost in the book itself and in this mystery, she starts interacting with Erik, and then you get all of this sort of this love story romance between the two. And it's not your traditional narrative. There's these time gaps and jumps and blank spaces that you are left to fill in on your own. Um, did you find that the stakes in that part of the story were up to snuff? Did you find that it was compelling enough? I mean, I'm generally not a romance novel reader, so
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like that was maybe more so compelling. That was the thing that was the human characteristic to it that, gave it the life that it needed, right? Like, um, this again, this is something that it's kind of ironic, right? That the character S doesn't really have that identity, and it's Jen and Erik who are interpreting who Straka is, right? And it's their exchanges that actually pull them together and create this identity. And so in that same way, it's like this whole book is symbolic of how you are creating and engaging and creating that identity, right? Like it's so S the book creates identity, whereas S the character is devoid of it. It's interesting just because you're seeing this reflexive kind of thought repeated not only in uh, you know the the text itself, the exchange within Caldera and Straka. You have all of those questions about. I mean, even is Straka one person, right? Like, or is this multiple people? Is it just one wing of it, right? There's this system, and there's these things that are coming, that are happening in the fictional world outside of it that you're being pulled into. So,
yeah. And
I mean, like
Straka, the
it's
author,
necessary, like for you to actually be pulled in, like,
right? Straka, the author, is sort of the bridge to the whole thing. It sort of merges the two stories together, because you that is like the fundamental mystery. There isn't really a compelling mystery in the narrative, or even a compelling sort of full story between Jen and Erik as far as the narrative is constructed, but them trying to determine who Straka is, and you, the reader, trying to determine who Straka is, and the clues in the story itself, as Caldera has all these footnotes that are commenting on who Straka is, then that's the sort of bringing it all together piece. Did you? We've discussed that a little bit, you and I, via text, but it sounds like we have differing opinions as to who Straka was. What were your take homes on, like, when you finish it? Who did you think Straka was?
I mean, I don't think it ever definitively answers, right?
It
And so
doesn't.
in
It doesn't.
general, it feels like it's, could be one person, it could be many, or it could be a constructed individual. Does it really need a single answer? I don't know. There's so many questions that I have. And honestly, that's part of the fun that I feel like I enjoyed about this was, taking you on that journey to be able to try to think through what does that mean, right? I actually wanted to read just the last sentence, and I understand, right? This is maybe one of two endings, but I guess this to me is part of what I really liked in that last sentence where he goes, he can't see their faces through the glass, can't really see much about them at all, but he slides the glass closed and tells Solo that the ship is one of theirs. And so, for the identities of the two people at the wheel, well, both Sola and he will let their imaginations fill in their features. And so, it's that active engagement, whether it be, your uh, imagination filling in who Jen and Erik are. You don't truly know them, right? But you have all these clues through all the margins as you experience who you think they are, right? But those are all just snapshots. But when strung together, they are, in a way coming in, integrating into one another. You kind of see how Jen turns and transforms. You see how Erik kind of transforms. And so, regardless of who Straka is, just like S, right? Just like the book, it's how you engage with it that pulls us together. It's the relationship aspect to it through time that gives you that sense of identity, right? Identity in and of itself isn't something isolated, it's the relationship. And so, whether or not this is one person in a relationship with Caldera, or if you got, uh, you know, all of the other subjects that's going on, I don't think it matters, right? It matters,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean,
It just underlines the point.
I think that's one way you can take it. I was much more like they do come to a conclusion, at least Jen and Erik do, right? Like they come to a conclusion that it's one person because they're going to write their book. They've found the place where S goes at the end of the end of the story, this sort of winter land, this land of snow, and they're going to write their book and publish it. Um, and they have an answer as to who he is. That it's this other character, Vaclav Straka, who just has a different middle initial than the actual author of the book. Instead of V.M.Straka, I think it's V.A.Straka. And there's some references as to this girl named Signy being possibly his daughter with one of the other members, because there is this group known as S, and it's a bunch of like freedom writers that they are people that write out against the the corrupt governments and things that they live in. And you have this organization as well as like a shadow organization that mimics them by the same name. They have that whole side story. And J.J. Abrams is sort of known for this. If you've ever seen Lost, there's so much there that very little ever actually gets completely resolved to the point where you're just left with a bunch of random sort of through lines that you can follow, but there isn't an answer, as you were saying. Um, but they believed that this V.A.Straka was the actual man, and there's some references to him throughout, and there are definitive details as to who is not Straka. There were multiple references to this person not being the one, and they can prove it. Um, but yeah, the ending to me not having a true answer to who Straka was didn't break it for me, but also just made it a little, again, sort of unfulfilled. especially if there's supposed to be one, if there's supposed to be an answer at the end.
And part of that is like being able to live with the ambiguity, right? Live with the paradox.
So, that being said, did you have a favorite sort of insert as you went through? I know we've got to wrap up here pretty quick.
Yeah, I think like the letters were really interesting as you found out like more about the characters themselves. So I kind of liked the personal nature of that. Obviously, like the wheel, if you're trying to decode, these pieces, that was probably the most like unique piece. But it's just fun, like when you've got the little maps in there. I guess the little postcards are. It's fun because you have all these different symbols that you're trying to string along together in the different places. So, like there were, yeah, maybe not one, but I just loved the variety of them that added a whole nother texture to it. And it wasn't just like one type of thing. There are newspaper articles, right? And it just felt, it made it me feel way more real. Like there's pages that, like if I was a university student, I've got a Pollard State University insert where they've got their notes on it. It added to the authenticness to pull you into the story. So not one in particular, but just the variety is what I loved.
Yeah, my favorite was definitely the napkin because it's an actual napkin that he drew a map on. Also, the newspaper article I did think was pretty good. It was probably the first or um, the second insert where it's there are other stories on there, and you can read sort of the job market is was collapsing at the time, and there's other issues with like the beat with beef. So there are these fabricated news stories that you could read through and get an idea of what's going on in the world around those times as well, which I thought were pretty good. But yeah, I think the the story really, as far as identity was concerned, commented a lot on Heraclitus and sort of Hume's thoughts on the Ship of Theseus paradox, where there isn't, as you were saying before, there isn't a finite identity. Like Hume's more modern, Heraclitus more ancient. Both were both commented on the continuity of being, and as time passes, there isn't this continuous sort of static state of you. You're different from one minute to the next based on your gathered experiences and perceptions of the world as they change. And that's where you used the quote earlier. They talk about it a lot in the book, and it's repeated multiple times. What starts what starts at sea, or what starts at the water, ends at the water. And Heraclitus was his main saying was that this a man can't step into the same river twice. That whole concept of it, the both the man and the water that he's stepping in being different, because the water is flowing as time passes and the man changes from minute to minute, um, versus the more constant states that are sort of proposed by Aristotle and these other philosophers throughout the years. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting book, interesting concept, interesting narrative. What were your thoughts as far as the book? Your final thoughts on the book, and give it a rating.
Yeah. I would definitely say if you like puzzles, if you like philosophy, um, it's definitely one that you have to work at. I would borrow it from a friend if you're unsure if you want to go through that amount of effort. You know, it does cost a little bit. But if you want clean answers, I'd say skip it. Probably not for you. Personally, as much as it was hard, um, I'd probably give it an 8. Surprisingly, just because of the uniqueness of the form factor. To me, this was more about art. I really enjoyed that. It really made me think deep. I actually don't think that I probably got as much out of it as I probably could have, and I probably like, I as much as I tried to do some of the decoding, I obviously didn't go the full length. I didn't go, that full chapter. But regardless of that, I still feel like I got the journey that I needed to out of it. So definitely one where, like, again, like, I wouldn't mind rereading this one again in the future, and I'd probably even get more out of it. So, like, in that respect, I really enjoyed that. Although not one that I would just pick up. It would have to be one where, just casually. Like, this would be one where, if I'm going to be on a holiday break, where I can really dive into it and plow through it. That's probably one for you. How about you, Joe?
The same. I can't recommend it necessarily as just to pick up and read. It's more of uh, an an experience as far as the book is concerned. So the same. I would probably borrow it if I could from someone that has all of the inserts present and accounted for. Um, I I would give it a 6 as far as a book is concerned. Like,
Yeah,
if
that's fair.
yeah, if I'm just commenting on the book itself as a piece of literature, both the marginalia as well as the text itself, I just felt like it fell short in some ways, but I still enjoyed it. I still thought there were some interesting comments, interesting commentary on philosophy within it. But as an experience, as a coffee table book, something to just have out, I could get up to an 8 for that. Um, so definitely something that I think is an interesting object and something that people should kind of look into if you're into odd pieces of literature, these sort of ergodic things like House of Leaves or Horror Store, some of these types of books. So, with that being said, I know you've got to go, so let's flip on over and spin our wheel for our next book. All of these are more traditional pieces of literature, so hopefully we let's see here if I can share my screen. There we go. We've got some different books as I was able to work through some of my additions to the list while you were finishing up this book. But I won't go through and read them all. We'll just hit spin and see what we've got. All right. Looks like we're reading Book of Joy. Another one of yours. That's like 4 of yours in a row. We'll get one of mine eventually.
That's good. I could use some joy in my life right now.
All right, Erik. Well, you have a great rest of your day, and we will come back in about a month after reading the Book of Joy. It's the only one on this list I don't own, so
There you go.
looks like I'm going to be trying to find it at the library.